Okay, today I want to talk about another RFC. And this one is actually related to one we talked about 2 weeks ago. And that's, let me check here, the HTML5 support, right? And I was talking to Niels, the creator of this RFC. And he told me, yeah, you really want to look into this one as well, because there are some more changes coming to PHP 8.4, and you can't really look at these two RFCs separately. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to read through the opt-in DOM spec compliance. And this is an interesting one. I read the intro already. We're going to go through it. It's super interesting. So the DOM extension in PHP is used to parse, query, and manipulate XML and HTML documents. And if you remember from the previous video, PHP is getting a new class, the HTML document class, which it supports HTML5. So it properly supports the most up-to-date HTML spec, which, by the way, is 16 years old, but let's not talk about it. Now, the DOM extension is supposed to follow the DOM specification. Supposed to. Originally, this was the DOM core level 3 specification, but nowadays that specification has evolved into the current living specification. And I think this is quite a long document. Yeah, we can scroll through it. Yeah, this is what makes the DOM spec, I guess. So, unfortunately, there are many bugs in PHP's DOM extension. I mean, that's okay. It's a huge document here. I would expect there might be some bugs in any implementation. Most of those bugs are related to namespace and attribute handling. This leads to people trying to work around those bugs by relying on more bugs or on undocumented side effects of incorrect behavior, leading to even more issues in the end. Furthermore, some of these bugs may have security implications. Note that the bugs are not HTML exclusive, but also apply to XML documents. Now, just realize what is going on here. So PHP, I don't know how old the DOM extension is, but probably quite an old thing. Let's actually look at the PHP DOM. When was it introduced? Is it listed somewhere here? No, it's not. Anyway, this is super interesting. You have a buggy implementation and people start relying on that buggy implementation. Technically, you can fix those bugs. I mean, that's not a breaking change because the way it was supposed to work, it never did. So it's just a bug fix if you were to fix those. But if you know that the bug fix will break many people's implementation, while in theory it's not a breaking change, in practice it will break a lot of people's code. And this is the interesting area this RFC is trying to navigate. And I find that super intriguing. So let's continue to read. Some of these bugs are caused because the method or property was implemented correctly back in the day, or because the original DOM 3 specification used to be unclear. A smaller part of this is because the specification has made breaking changes when HTML5 first came along and the specification creators had to unify what browsers implemented into a single specification that everyone agreed on. Makes sense. Yeah, this is just part of software development, things break. It's not possible to just fix these bugs because people actually rely on these bugs, right? They are also often unaware that what they're doing is actually incorrect or causes the internal document state to be inconsistent. We therefore have to fix this in a backwards compatible way. So a hard requirement is that all code written for the current DOM extension keeps working without requiring changes. In summary, the core challenge lies in the fact that 2 decades of buggy behavior have become deeply ingrained in the system. And how much I love this statement. This is like almost poetry, right? And because, you know, it's so true of real software development. It comes so close to, this is real life. We can talk about specifications and best practices, but this is just what happens in real life. And I think it's a testament to PHP's success. Okay, it's never been perfect, but it worked good enough for people to embrace it. And the quirks, people worked around it for 20 years. For 20 years, people have been using these bugs and just working around them. And to the point where, we can't just fix the bugs anymore because it would break so many code bases. I love this. In summary, the core challenge lies in the fact that 2 decades of buggy behavior have become deeply ingrained in the system. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So let's see how Niels proposes to fix all of this. So it's clear that any behavioral fix must come in an opt-in manner. Fortunately, the HTML5 RFC that landed in PHP 8.4 gives us a unique opportunity to do so. That's right, because there's a whole new implementation for HTML5. It's completely separate from the current HTML kind of compliant implementation. So to recap, that RFC has introduced 3 new classes in the DOM namespace: DOM document, XML document, and HTML document. When utilizing these new classes, HTML5 parsing and serializing will be used. The old DOM classes are unaffected. As this RFC landed in the development cycle of 8.4, there are no users yet. I propose that when the new classes are used, then the DOM extension will opt into spec compliance behavior and the bugs are resolved. Oh, that's interesting. So when the new implementation is used, the underlying DOM extension will automatically change some of its behavior. I don't know if I'm reading that right, but we might discover some more about it further in the RFC. When you are using the old DOM document class, the old implementations will be used. This means that backwards compatibility is kept. Great idea. This document also includes a bug list highlighting issues within the scope of this RFC. Bugs are categorized into 2 categories, type issues and behavioral issues. So there is a huge list of concrete issues. We're not going to go through all of them. We're just going to read through the main part of the RFC. Okay, so, but let's see here. Type issues involve incorrect property, return value, or method argument types, such as non-nullable string property, currently returning an empty string instead of null as specified. Behavioral issues are about incorrectly implemented operation semantics, and the majority of bugs addressed by this RFC fall in this category. Okay, solving type issues. Solving behavioral issues, type issues. Solving behavioral issues is possibly an opt-in way, but type issues are more difficult to solve. In particular, changing types is backwards incompatible, true, especially considering that the DOM classes can be extended by userland classes. And I think an added difficulty here is that there's a new HTML5 compliant class that parses HTML code the right way, right? But it still produces a DOM list with DOM nodes, and those classes are all the same. They are shared between the old and the new implementation, which is super nice because it means that you can, in theory, just switch the parser. You can switch from the old to the new implementation, and all your code will work in theory exactly the same. But I guess that leads to an issue here because you cannot change any type definitions within those classes. That's not possible. So therefore, I propose to switch to the following backwards compatible solution. The HTML5 RFC added class aliases, such as DOM node to DOM node. Yeah, so just to recap, these are these built-in classes, the underlying class, DOM node, DOM element, DOM attribute, stuff like that. And they are aliased into the newly added namespace. I propose to make them real classes. Oh, interesting, instead of aliases. This way we can leave the old classes untouched while fixing the types in the new classes, even though most of the structure remains the same. This also means DOM document will no longer inherit from DOM document. Yeah, okay. This inheritance was introduced in the HTML5 RFC, but would no longer be possible due to type divergence. Yeah. Note that a lot of code is still shared internally between these classes, so this is very doable from PHP's internal point of view. Okay, I would say that's a good solution. I actually didn't really like the fact that these aliases were created in the previous RFC, because in my mind it led to like a bit of confusion and just like different names doing the same things. In this case, there will actually be a pretty big difference between the old and the new implementation, and it just pulls the two further apart. And I think that's a good thing. Now, the disadvantage of doing this is that it becomes more difficult for userland code to support the old and new classes simultaneously. Yeah, that is a problem. They'd have to use type unions now. Then again, that's probably fine because their semantic behavior can differ quite a bit. Okay, so the one big like positive thing I mentioned of these classes being used in the two implementations is now gone. Okay, I didn't know that yet. How do I feel about that? I think it makes sense. It will require a bit more updating. I'm thinking about, like, I don't know if you've heard, but I'm writing this template engine for PHP, of course, who doesn't do that once in their PHP career. But and I'm currently using like a third-party package because the current PHP implementation doesn't support HTML5, but I want to switch to the new implementation. However, it means that I'll also have to update all the underlying classes because they are currently relying on these kind of DOM node, DOM element, DOM attribute classes, and they will have to be updated to the new ones. Okay, that's a bit of a hassle. I guess it will, like, people will be able to automate this with something like Rector if you have lots of code relying on this. I think it makes sense I think it makes sense. If we want to move forward, this is kind of the price you pay for it. And this is the perfect time to do it because we're adding new code. We're adding a whole new implementation. So it makes sense that we're doing it now. This is like, if there's any time to do it, it is now, because we can do it totally without any breaking change. So the DOM spec has no explicit support for things like DOM entities and DOM notation nodes. I don't know what those are. I prefer to keep the support in because otherwise it makes working with XML more difficult, especially in combination with other extensions. The spec authors have removed some support for these things to simplify the specification, but there's no reason we should drop support for these things that don't have an alternative. Okay. Sounds just a good thing for backwards compatibility, right? Okay, so migration, will unfortunately be not trivial for everyone because many users rely on behavior that was not intended by the spec or rely on bugs. Furthermore, there are userland libraries that currently work with the old classes and won't be able to support the old and new classes at the same time easily because of the type and behavior differences. True. So I expect the migration of the ecosystem to take a long time. There's a high chance that migration of all old code won't happen until PHP versions older than 8.4 are end of life. And even then, it will probably take another 10 years. This is something, I look at version stats every twice a year. Or let's see here, version stats. And I also look at the, over here, at the numbers of required versions. So the minimum required version from packages. And well, let's do it like this. As you can see here, so in July 2024, there are still more than half of the packages, the top 1,000 packages on packages, I should say, are supporting PHP 7. Like somewhere in the 7s, some even PHP 5. And that's insane because if we look at PHP timeline here, supported versions, let's see, PHP 8.1 is already security fixes only, and 8.2 is nearing at that stage as well. 8.1, oh yeah, since there has been a recent RFC where let's see, where the security fixes period has been prolonged for 1 year for all new versions. That's interesting. But yeah, it's like it will take a long time before, like, where were we over here? Before, like, the majority of packages will support this, probably. I don't think that's a good idea, by the way. I think packages should just tag new versions and only use the latest, most up-to-date PHP version. If people are still running old code, they can still use like old versions of those packages, but this way package authors are pushing the community more towards using an updated PHP version. And honestly, it's not difficult anymore to update your PHP version. There are tools to automate the upgrade path of your project. There are, like, when it comes to deprecations, it's very manageable, I find, in recent versions. The major frameworks are keeping up to date with it just fine. So, you know, I would really like to see the PHP community push more towards using up-to-date modern PHP versions instead of like supporting, what is this, 7 and 5. That it doesn't make any sense, and it's well, it's maybe this is a bit too harsh, but I think it's damaging the ecosystem. It makes it so that we are much slower in progressing. So anyway, a conscious decision is to not deprecate the old DOM classes anytime soon. Yeah, maybe it would be good to deprecate them, honestly, but yeah, so much code would break. New code can use the new DOM classes, while old code can keep using the old classes and migrate at their own pace. By the way, speaking of deprecation notices, oh yeah, I made a video here dealing with deprecations, which deprecations aren't that big a deal. They are notices, they aren't errors. You turn them off whenever you want to. Deprecations are just a message saying, hey, something is gonna break in the future. I wanna warn you about that today. Maybe you want to like take care of it already now that you have the time and it's not a pressing matter. So I don't really mind deprecation notices. Yeah. It might be good to not wait too long to deprecate the old DOM classes. You know, once again, pushing the community forward. We really need this. We cannot like keep having so much old, outdated, imperformant and insecure code. If we scroll a bit up here, let's see. Oh yeah, usage statistics. Like, look at that. There's 8.2 is pretty big now, 8.3 as well. So a little over 50% of people are using a actively supported PHP versions. So that means that almost 50% of people are using a PHP version that, well, these are composer stats, right? So it's not representative for everyone, but this is like the optimistic view, probably. 50%, around 50% of people are using PHP versions that aren't actively maintained anymore. I think that needs to change. I really do. So yeah, I didn't expect this RFC to like take a deep dive into like the PHP upgrade path, but here we are. Now, the old DOM classes and new DOM classes are internal data structure compatible, okay, with each other. So it will be possible to import the old DOM nodes into the new DOM. Yeah, it's only the method signatures that change. This should also help library developers to migrate. They could write an adapter layer or adapter helper functions. This would, for example, quite a few libraries reduce the requirement to maintain two different versions of the same one. Of course, there are also libraries that expose the DOM classes that are used. They would have a harder time pulling off an adapter interface And there might not be an easy solution for this except to place the burden on the user of such library. Yeah. To accomplish this, I propose to add a method to DOM document. Ah, that's interesting. And this is quite nice, actually. Like, Niels is really taking backwards compatibility into account and doing as much as possible to make the upgrade path as easy as possible. And this is interesting. You might know that we're building like a small framework on this channel. And it's so nice because you don't have to take anything into account. You just start from scratch. Yeah, with a project like PHP, that's not possible anymore. And you see the same happening in big frameworks as well, Laravel and Symfony. They have to constantly like add code, not because it's needed, but because of backwards compatibility. And you need to deal with these kinds of things. It's just part of like popular projects that go on for years on end. So that's interesting. The reason to keep this as a separate method is to not pollute the existing import node method. Yeah, good thing. This method can throw if an unsupported node is imported, just like import node already does. Sure. A previous iteration of this proposal also proposed to adopt legacy modern node methods. This could create two different representations of the same node at the same time. Okay, yeah. This can cause weird issues because the new DOM and old DOM make different assumptions. To prevent issues, I dropped this from this proposal. Okay, makes sense. A previous iteration included the import modern node method that was added to DOM document. Upon trying to implement this, I found it was too difficult to make it work correctly due to the limitations of the import code implementation. Sure. So this is on a new implementation. It has a import legacy node. Yeah. In particular, in old DOM, namespaces must always be attached to an element, but when importing a node with namespaced attributes, this could sometimes lose the namespace of those attributes because at that point, the clone subtree is not attached to the document yet. Okay, yeah, there's some things that make this difficult, I guess. While it's probably possible to fix this for most cases, there will always be cases where this issue causes issue. As such, I would rather not provide this functionality than provide it in half working, half broken state. Good idea, actually. The reverse direction does not suffer from this problem because we have our own namespace handling code for new DOM. So I guess like the new version, I haven't read the spec, right? But this is my assumption. The new version is more strict. You have more context available, so you can always convert to the old one. But if you try to convert from the old one to the new one, there are lots of intricacies that are difficult. So yeah, good thing, I would say. Testing. To proactively prevent as many implementation issues as possible, I try to test every edge case I found in the DOM spec. Wow. The working group that maintains the DOM spec also has a repository full of tests. It's called WPT, the Web Platform Test. I ported a subset of these tests from JavaScript to PHP, and those ported tests all passed. This increases the confidence that the implementation is correct. Note that I only ported a subset because porting is very time-consuming and mentally draining. Yeah, poor Niels, even with automation. Yeah, I mean, this is, I can only imagine, like, this is not the most fun thing to work on, I would think, but he's doing it. So yeah, very nice. To ensure that the old DOM classes still work, I rely on PHP's test suite, and I have also run the PHP unit tests of real-world DOM utilizing libraries. Cool. I've tested Viwi's XML library, Mensbeam library, some simple SAML libraries, okay, some packages. And then there's the bug list, but I said, yeah, we're not gonna scroll through all of this because that's super boring. These are just the things that changed. And bugs, alternatives. There are some userland solutions, apparently. Let's read through the alternatives as well, just to get a full picture of like the thought process that went into this RFC. People have implemented userland DOM libraries on top of the existing DOM extension. However, even userland solutions can't fully work around issues caused by PHP's DOM extension. This is because those libraries still have to work with broken methods, of course. I often receive bug reports from developers of such libraries regarding functionality they're using that doesn't interact well because they're indirectly relying on bugs and hacks, or the underlying DOM method has an unfixable bug. Again, those underlying bugs cannot be fixed because they would break backwards compatibility. The real solution is to provide a BC preserving fix at PHP side. An entirely new DOM extension. I basically copy-pasted this from the HTML5 RFC. One might wonder why we don't just create an entirely new DOM extension based on another library with HTML5 support. There are a couple of reasons. Interoperability problems with other extensions. Interoperability problems within user code. Right now, you can still import DOM nodes, right, from between the old and the new DOM. Additional maintenance work and complexity. A spec compliance mode can share almost all code, while a new extension cannot. I don't have time to build this. That's a very good reason. So I think Niels is doing great work here, and I think it makes sense, like what we're coming up. So no backwards compatibility breaks, and the RFC impact doesn't really matter here. Future scope. When this RFC lands, it will become much easier to add new features to the DOM extension. Preferably, I will only add new features to the new classes, and keep the old classes as is. An example of a new feature I've worked on based on the development of this RFC is native CSS selector support. That's pretty cool. I don't know if there's a test we can look at here. 15K. Oh yeah, okay, so yeah, using like CSS selectors. Okay, cool. That's cool. This is cool, the fact that this would work. But this is not included in the RFC, by the way. But this is like optionally future thing. Okay, so voting, everyone voted yes. Again, I'm a little surprised with 14 people voting on this. I talked to Larry on this channel a couple of months ago. We were talking about like internals. He mentioned that there are, I think, 1,500 people who have voting rights. 14 people are voting on this. And I feel like it's a pretty big like change for PHP. It's a very good change. I would have voted yes as well. But like, where are the internals who help shape PHP here? That's a question that I'm still left with. So yeah, anyway, that's I don't want to dive too deep into that rabbit hole, but I would like to see 100 people vote for this. And if everyone's voting yes, then all fine. But just, some people, a small group of people, well, not so small group, but a small group of people have gotten these voting rights. Please then just use them, I would say. Anyway, but okay, I'm going into the rabbit hole. I'm climbing out of it right now. Let's summarize here. A great RFC. And it's super interesting how Niels is taking backwards compatibility into account while still pushing the language forward. And okay, not everyone might be using like the DOM extension or HTML5 support within their project directly, but for frameworks, for packages, PHP is a web language. We're dealing with a lot of HTML and DOM. So this is a good thing. This is a good feature for PHP, and I'm glad that it's getting into PHP, even though it has to take backwards compatibility into account. There's no way around that. We cannot start from scratch. So yeah, this is great. I love it. I'm a little sad that like interoperability between the old and the new implementations is gone basically, because like the DOM node and the alias are pulled apart. But I get it. And it's a thing we'll have to deal with. Like for me personally, it will require update a couple of classes, but it won't be a big deal. And I'm going to do that. I'm talking about Tempest now. That's my use case for it. So yeah, makes sense. It's a bit sad, but it's the reality, right? So yeah, good. PHP 8.4. I'm really looking forward to it. There are a lot of interesting things here, and yeah, great release. It's like the first time in a couple of years that I feel like, oh yeah, this is a good release. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah. Hey, I want to thank you for being here. Share your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, hit like and the subscribe button while you're down there. You might have heard that I'm still a little sick, so I hope that wasn't too annoying. There might be some cuts in the video because I started coughing, but I managed, and I'm glad that we read through another RFC. So with all of that being said, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.